At 93 years old, Charles had seen and experienced a lifetime's worth of events, both triumphant and tragic. A decorated war veteran, he'd lived through battles that most could only read about in history books. His body had grown frail over the years, but his mind was sharp, still echoing with the voices of comrades long gone. Charles wasn't just a veteran, he was a living testament to courage, sacrifice, and resilience. One bright afternoon, as he made his way down the quiet main street of his hometown, Charles found himself confronted by something he never expected to face: disrespect. A group of young bikers, brash and loud, rode through the town in a noisy display of recklessness. They were a regular sight in the area, known for their raucous behavior. But today, they saw Charles walking slowly with the aid of his cane, his face marked with the years he'd lived. "Hey, old man," one of the bikers shouted, his voice dripping with mockery. "Don't you have anything better to do than walk around here looking like that?" The other bikers laughed, circling Charles as if he were a target, their motorcycles revving and echoing through the street. "Why don't you go back to the nursing home, Grandpa?" Another sneered, and they all burst into cruel laughter. Charles felt the sting of their words, but he refused to show any sign of weakness. He'd endured much worse in his life, but this was different. It wasn't a battle on foreign soil. It was a confrontation with the ignorance and arrogance of youth. "I've earned my right to walk here," Charles said, his voice steady, though it carried the weight of years and experience. But the bikers didn't back off. Instead, they pushed closer, mocking him even more, daring him to react. One of them grabbed his cane and yanked it away, as if it were some toy to be played with. The other bikers jeered. Charles, though visibly shaken, kept his composure. But inside, something began to stir, a deep resolve that had been cultivated over decades. He wasn't just going to stand there and take it. Not after everything he'd been through. And so, with the bikers still taunting him, Charles did something that no one could have expected. With a trembling hand, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He didn't call the police or a family member. He didn't even dial the town's mayor. Instead, Charles made a phone call to someone he knew well, someone with the power to help him in a way that would make the bikers think twice. On the other end of the line was General David Roberts, a retired officer who had served alongside Charles during the war. The two men shared a bond formed through years of military service. They had faced the harshest of conditions together, and now Charles was calling on that same strength and connection to deal with this situation. "David," Charles said, his voice steady but urgent, "I need your help. Some punks are harassing me in the street. I don't need you to arrest them, but I do need you to send a message that they'll never forget." There was a long pause, and then the general replied, "I'm on it, Charles." Within hours, General Roberts had mobilized a group of veterans, all former soldiers who had served under him during their time in the military. They rolled into town in military vehicles, their presence commanding immediate attention. The bikers had no idea what was coming. When they saw the convoy approach, they thought it was some kind of joke. But their amusement quickly turned to apprehension when they saw Charles standing there, not alone, but flanked by a group of veterans who were not to be trifled with. The bikers, still laughing, didn't know what to make of the scene. But Charles wasn't finished yet. Standing tall with his cane in hand, he looked the leader of the bikers square in the eye and said, "You think you can disrespect me because I'm old? I've fought in wars you can't even imagine. You'll never know the meaning of true strength until you've faced what we've faced." His words hung in the air, and the bikers fell silent, some shifting uncomfortably on their bikes. The leader, trying to save face, stepped forward. "We were just having a little fun, old man. Didn't mean any harm." But Charles wasn't having it. "Fun? You think it's fun to tear someone down for their age? For their history? Let me tell you something, this isn't just about me. This is about respect. You should have learned that long before today." The bikers, now visibly shaken, backed off. Their bravado had faded, replaced by a recognition of the power standing before them. It wasn't the military vehicles that had intimidated them. It wasn't the uniformed veterans that made them pause. It was the calm strength in Charles's voice, the unwavering authority that only comes from a lifetime of earned respect. As the bikers slowly turned their bikes around and drove off, Charles stood tall, his hand still gripping his cane, his head held high. He hadn't needed to fight. He had just needed to remind them who he was. And in that moment, he had won. This story isn't just about a 93-year-old man standing up to bullies. It's about the power of respect, the enduring strength of veterans, and the wisdom that comes with age. It's about the courage to stand your ground, no matter how old you are, no matter what the world thinks of you. And for the bikers who thought they could bully an elderly man, they learned that day that true strength isn't about youth or size. It's about heart. It's about history. And it's about knowing when to stand up and say, "I'm not going to let this slide."